All right, welcome everyone back to today's episode of Is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio, Root Sheva. And the show is syndicated as the Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour with Ari Louis and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free to do so. And of course, I'm on JApp, www.j-app.me. You can also download JApp through Google Play Stores. We're continuing the conversation with the author of the brand new hit book, The World of the Ger, Rabbi David Katz. Rabbi Katz, before commercial break, I was discussing if Kohanim, the priestly tribe of the Jewish people, if that is a racist concept, because there are certain privileges they have, there's certain laws they have to follow that the non-Kohanim do not have to follow. So tell us if you believe that is a racist endeavor.
So when we teach Ger, again, party line, good or bad, the Ger is a member of the fourth house of Israel, right? And so you have a lot of the Messianic groups, they want in as 10 lost tribes, right? Hello, if you're out there. Hi, guys, how you doing? And the answer is, it's not going to happen, right? Even if however you feel Jewish in your heart and you're convinced, but Rabbi Katz, I feel Jewish. I even like the gefilte fish. I'll take a second thing of chrein. I'm coming in. I'm saying, no, you're not. Even if you were so Jewish, and I think you're the second coming of Jerry Seinfeld, right? You would have to undergo conversion. It's that simple, right? Your mom's not Jewish. You can't prove it. And there's reasons why, right? Let's say your great-great-great-grandmother was Jewish. And all the women call all the way through. But you've undergone, let's just say she was a Cohen, right? You were a Cohen. And they married, an improper Cohen marriage. And then there was some kind of fooling around, and there's Mamzeris, which is a bastard, right? There's a lot of problems. You can't just go back and say, well, I'm Jewish because I'm Jewish. If you're Jewish today, it means you've made it through the gauntlet. And I'm not being naive. Let's say that anyone's what's called their yichus, their family history. Let's say it is dodgy. Let's say some guy's great-great-great-grandfather was not Jewish, infiltrated, said he was a Cohen, and married a harlot. Okay, it happened. Let's say. And today you got Moshe Streimel, the kid who comes out of that union. He says, I am a Kohen, I go back to Aaron. The Talmud says you're not to take away his priesthood for matters of peace. Right? When Eliyahu comes, Elijah the prophet, we will find out who's who. But until then, if you're here, you're assumed to be here, and there are ways of rectifying if you're not here. And again, conversion is an option for those that want to convert. Being a Noahide is an option for those that want to be a Noahide. Remaining an idolater is an option for he who wishes to remain an idolater. And Ger is able to enter the fourth house of Israel. It's where they'll say, but why do I want the fourth house? I want the third house. And you say, it doesn't work that way. Again, party line. Because under those party lines, Boker Tov, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not Jewish. And this is what nobody wants to hear, Jews or non-Jews. Right? Because under these terms, there is no Jewish people. There is Kohen, Levi, Israel. Right? The Israelites, the Levites, and the priests. And we have a contract in the Torah called the Kahal, the congregation. That we are obligated in one Torah, just like the Gerimar, right? Fourth house, the whole world is really bound by at least words of Torah, if not the commandments. And my commandments are not the same as Ari's. I have different commandments. Some we have in common, some we don't. This is my personal belief, and it becomes because I am a Kohen, like I already told you, right? I don't think it's healthy for the Jews to continue assuming that we're just Jews. Because now we're in Israel, where there's going to be a temple, I am not Jewish. I am a priest. I am not an Israelite. You can say, I'm a part of Bnei Yisrael, the greater congregation. There are borrowed terms, but the difference is the mazel, the relationship God has with a priest is not the same with the Levite. And the Levite is not the same as the Israelite. Israelite not the same as the Ger. Ger is not the same as the Noahide. God has relationships with these people. It's in our best interest to take that seriously and understand what that means. So, does Israel have a caste system? Kind of. Is there an elite system? Kind of. Is it God ordained? Yeah. Does that mean the Kohen priest is better than the Israelite? No. But does that mean we have the same job? No. Does that mean the Israelites should say, we're all the same? No. And that's why we're in exile for 2,000 years. One reason, at least. The priests need to reclaim the spirituality of the priest. It's prophetically told in the book of Malachi. I'll close on this point that Chaim, my co-author in the book, is a Levite. And when we're talking about Ger entering the fourth house of Israel, I don't know how many fights we had where we realized, Chaim, you're being a Levite. And you'd say, David, you're being a Kohen. And it's real. When you really get into that world, you see the Torah distinctions of mankind are real, and they are not derogatory or a lesser status. That's why Ger is a fantastic concept. Because that is what God is relating to you, period. Our job is to recognize that and grow into it, which is at the higher level of providence.
All right, now let's talk about racism as far as how Jews are perceived, particularly in the media, the concept of Jewish shtick. What are your thoughts about that?
I think Jews have, in the Torah, part of our learning in Talmud, really archaic law, right, draconian law even, is knowledge of our surroundings, right? You might call it the goyim, right? Is goy a good word or bad word? Goy is really Hebrew for nations, and it's to the inverse of Gerim. And Gerim are part of Israel, goyim nations are not. That's where the word comes from. Then in Yiddish is the concept of taking Torah terms and speaking of them in a slang fashion, right? And that's what Yiddish is in terms of, table talk of Yiddish. It uses the technical terms of Torah and uses them in slang, not necessarily derogatory, just slang. So in the yeshivas, let's say we're talking about Talmud, blah, 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 about the 7 Canaanite nations, right? So they're going to speak amongst themselves in a slang vernacular that everyone understands. Again, derogatory doesn't need to come into it. But you're gonna get subtle distinctions in explaining the concepts, right? The ironic part is there's a joke that you learn the Talmud. You say, "Hey Ari, did you know that Moses had a brother?" You say, "Yeah, really? Yeah, his name was Aaron." And apparently, these two guys led millions of people out of Egypt. And you say, "Where did you read that?" You say the Talmud says it. What's the joke? That the Jews have got to the point where they're learning Talmud and they forgot the Chumash, the Bible, right? So you're learning simple facts of mankind in a Talmudic sense, and again, you've lost the context at that point. And this is a problem of exile. They've lost the context. But through the modern era, you have kind of the Jewish, what's this called, the seichel, the way of viewing it. And, I look at Seinfeld, one of the funnier things that the guy said, he said, in his comedy routine, you mention a chimp, right? He makes fun of chimpanzees. He says chimps are funny, right? Other animals, dogs are not funny, right, in terms of this, right? Like, comedy, right? Comedy theory, you don't say my friend, my friend Bradley and I went to the mall. It's not funny. But if you say, my friend Billy, he and I went to the mall. So the Jew understands the wisdom, I think, of the Bria, of creation. And there's a fine line between funny and insult, right? And I think the Jews have successfully walked a fine line of their shtick, right? Of really not grossly offending, I think on a large part. I think the Jewish shtick is a healthy dose of mankind enjoying himself. Whereas you look at the same other side of the way, it can very easily turn into a very nasty affair. And I think it's the Jewish scholarship that always walks that fine line. Are we being racist? Are we being funny? Are we being racist? Are we being educated? Right? And I think we've managed it well. The fact is, it always needs updated files. To where to the certain taboos need clarified. You can't just remain old school thinking. And, some things I think that today are funny, but in 5 years from now they won't be too funny, and that always needs work done.
Again, this is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio, Root Sheva. The show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour with Ari Louis and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free to do so. Again, continue the conversation with Rabbi David Katz. Rabbi Katz, let's talk about something else that's a bit of an issue. A lot of people say is prejudice. Why is it the Jewish people, in particular the religious segment, feel about homosexuals the way that they do?
Party line, once again, right? I'm finding with my own work. When you don't know the answer, you go machmir, stringent, right? I don't want any non-Jews around me. That means that you don't know the first thing about non-Jews in Torah. So, the gay issue is something that, how many people out there want to find out what that is? Who's going to go out there and experiment? For me, if we're talking with non-Jews, I talk to non-Jews, right, to find out these things. This is not the kind of conversation you want to have just in terms of privacy. This is their lives, right? Non-Jewish isn't so private. So therefore, we just put our foot down and say, no, it's all you're going to die. And I'm finding out, with the 7 laws, the non-Jews are saying we would like to come around. But we got to know what's up with this one law. So the bottom line is this. We have a tradition of judgment. And it has to go from judgment to rachmi, mercy. We have to know, at what point does God say no? At what point does God say, if you got to do what you got to do? Whether it's gay, eating like an animal, right? Improper relations with your spouse. There's a lot of sins that go on that are perceived as maybe even permitted, right? So I'm not going to say I know the answer here, but I'm going to give you an example of what could be an answer, right? Again, this is just a theory. I don't know if it's true yet. I haven't gone into this. I don't want to go into it at this time. But I'm going to say it like this. Let's hypothetically say that when the Torah says do not, gay is wrong and blah, 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 right? I know the Torah says a ketubah, a marriage contract between men. Meaning, don't take the marriage to the point where there is literally, no covering of what you're doing, right? Let's say a guy's a racist. Anybody, right? Don't be so racist that you just literally have no shame. You see a black guy and the first thing you do is make a joke. A Chinese guy, make a joke, right? It's already, okay, you should not be racist. But there's another level when like the internet. Look at the internet. They turn everything just, hey, how you doing? No. Right? If you're going to do anything that's, let's say, even infringing on something, don't come out with it like there's no anything issue anywhere. So engaging is one thing, but putting your foot down and saying there is no structure of society, right? In those lines, I think that's where God draws the line. But if you're going to do things that are illicit, whether it's in food or any kind of thing, obviously the idea is to improve your character, whatever that means, right? But there's a fine line between death penalty and whatever else comes from there. And it's the learning aspect that needs clarified, as always.
All right, let's talk about another issue that may be considered prejudice. I talked about this at the top of the program, intermarriage. It's something Jews aren't supposed to do. There is a huge percentage now. It's about 70% that intermarry in the United States. But up until recently, that did not occur. Why was that? And then is that racist that you have a Jewish person tell their family you cannot marry a non-Jew?
And see, this is probably the biggest problem in yeshivas, right? Same thing with the gay thing. We know things are permitted, and everyone wants to find the formula of permission slip, right? And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of really strange things that are allowed in Torah. And the Torah says you can do it. But just know that to do it, you have to be on a level. If you do it, there's a reason why you do it. For example, non-Jewish wife. It's called the Yafa Toar, the captive of war. The Torah says you can marry under these circumstances a non-Jew. Even the high priest. You realize that? A high priest can marry a non-Jewish woman. But if you lust for her, if you're doing it from lust, and not because, as the Zohar says, she's the only woman left in terms of no one else will marry her, and all the conditions are met, and there's a million conditions to do it. If you're doing it from lust, you will bring a wayward child into the world. So God knows man is in a fallen condition. Man has a body and physicality to deal with. He does things that are less desirable than other ways. Intermarriage has been a problem since the get-go between the Gerim and the Jews. Now, the idolater is not a question. That's not going to happen. You don't mix idolatry and the service of God. That's obvious. Should be. But they were trying to satisfy, at what level does the Ger marry the Jew, or can they? By the time of the Gemara's, the Talmud's redaction in Babylon, they ended it. They said, you know what? This is just not going to work. This has brought nothing but hardship. It's over. And they have not touched it since then. As my opinion, my personal professional opinion, it's not worth it. Just like having more than one wife. Right? Some say, oh yeah, I want to have 10,000 wives. Yeah, it's all good. Whichever one, yeah. But it's not good. Right? It had its time. King David and the kingdom of David and all this stuff, things in Jewish history were created to create the fabric of the Bible and precedent of Jewish Torah history. But today, my Ger work, I will tell you, the intimacy of the Jew and the Ger in terms of discussing Torah is more precious than any kind of marriage that you would ever want to engage in. It's the closeness of souls and intimacy of Torah that the Torah was getting at. And then you had to go through the marriage thing. But it's since forbidden rabbinically, and I think it should remain that way. It's in the best interest of the souls. I really believe that.
All right. And last question we have for you, real quickly in a few minutes, if you talk about the bracha of Shlo Sani Goy, which is something Orthodox Jews say in the morning. It translates as, thank you, God, for not making me a non-Jew. Sometimes it translates as heathen even. So is that at all racist?
So the idea is a ger a goy? The answer is a ger is halachically not a goy. Right? So as much as we say that prayer every day, how do you think the ger feels when he makes that blessing every day? Right? The ger who came out of idolatry, attached to Israel, and he says, thank you, God, for bringing me out of that world, like Abraham. All the more so a Jew. Right? When a Jew can become what's called a mumar. Right? We have the status of a non-Jew. We're so divorced from the privilege of Torah spirituality. And when you recognize your soul, you say, thank God. Thank God I have a soul. And you're going to say, what, the non-Jew doesn't have a soul? We already covered that. It's about recovering the knowledge. Going here is simply the idolater that doesn't care about this stuff. Jews fall into the range of mumar, apostate. The Gerim are sunken in 2,000 years of Christianity. At the end of the day, it'll all be Israel, 4 houses, Cohen Levi Israel Ger, and we will all say, thank God that we all have a soul. Thank God God gave us the Torah. Thank God there's a God. So the Ger in particular is halachically not a goy. Right? So there it requires context and clarity and understanding what is meant when things are said and written down.
All right. Well, Rabbi Katz, thank you for being on the program today. Again, the book is The World of the Ger. That can be purchased at gergear.com. You can also check out the rabbi's website, somazal.com. Rabbi Katz, thank you for being on the program today.
Thanks for having me back, Ari.
All right. No problem. All right, folks, we're going to have a very special treat right now. We're going to talk about the news in the last few minutes with Rabbi Moshe Kleineman, who's from Moshav Alexander. Rabbi, how you doing out there?
Hi, Ari. How you doing? Mamish, it's gewaldig to be here. Mamish.
Yes, it definitely is gewaltig. So I heard in the news that a tiger got burned in a zoo in Gaza. Is that true?
It's a shaila, Ari. It's not pushing. I heard a psak from Rav Moshe Feinstein in a long time ago. If there's a tiger in Gaza and the meat is no longer kosher, what would it be? Do we give the meat to a Jew? But it's not kosher meat. We give it to the ger. Oh, the Torah tells us you give the nevela to the ger and you sell the meat to the nachri. But we don't know which one's the ger and the nachri. It's a lost tradition, I must tell you.
All right. Thank you for clearing that up. Now, tell us, Rabbi, what is the etymology of ISIS?
Right, ganze Shaila. Do we say that ISIS is a reiteration of the language? I don't understand where it comes from. It comes from Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh. And Lashon HaKodesh is the basis of English. Do we say it's not ISIS, but is? It's a double verb, reflexive connotation in the Lashon. You know what I'm saying? You know when you say it is. It just is, Ari.
Okay, Rabbi, last question before we end the program. Can you tell us if the weather has anything to do with Gog and Magog?
We find that the weather patterns in Bnei Brak, which is a short drive and skip and hop from Moshav Alexander, where I'm the Rav for the community. We find that the sun sets at about 4 minutes to Shkia, and the question is posed like this. I taught the sermon in my congregation. We said, if the sun is to rise before minutes before Shkia, and Shabbos comes tomorrow, do we hold like the Brisker Rav, the time is the sun has nothing to do with the Keiti Yamin? We bring the end of Sefer Malachi. Eliyahu Hanavi comes like smeltering silver and gold. I don't know if that's talking about now or the time when the sun originally set on Moshav Alexander. We're going to have to wait for Eliyahu Hanavi, B'ezras Hashem, Yikurim, and Rimenu to understand these questions and more. As we see in our time, it's very Nogeya, extremely Nogeya to our times, Ari.
Yes, Nogeya indeed. All right, well, Rabbi Moshe Kleinman from Moshav Alexander, thanks for being on the program today, Rabbi, breaking down the news. We appreciate it.
Shkayach.
Yes, indeed. That concludes our program, folks. Special thanks to our guest, Rabbi David Katz of Solmazal.com and Rabbi Moshe Kleinman of Moshav Alexander. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is a Prophecy on IsraelNationalRadio.com.